Welcome to PLASA and welcome to the first public talk of the day. My name's John Burton and I'm here to talk about HELA. Unfortunately the screens are quite small, so I'm hoping I had prepared for a giant Wembley size, Olympia sized screen, but these are quite small, so hopefully you'll be able to read what's on the screen. I'm also really bad at standing in one position. So if I start wandering about, just do this to me and I'll try and stay in the same place. But hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay. So I'm here to talk about HELA, which stands for Healthy Ears Limited Annoyance. I'm going to talk about how it started, where it comes from, and why it should be important to you. And I kind of know that it is important to everyone here because it's all about our industry and it's important about a very important part of our industry, which is hearing and sound. So, a bit of background. So, HELA didn't just come out of anywhere. It came out of lots of discussions that have been going on. On the date here, it says 2017. This is kind of a day we pinpointed as kind of the start of HELA official. But if you go back to, and this was an AES conference in Struer in Denmark, which I attended. It was my first ever academic conference, and various members who would go on to become HELA actually were at this conference. And some of the starting conversations about the HELA initiative began at this. But really, this discussion goes back 30, 40 years. There's a really great AES paper from 1976, saying we really should do something about educating people to do with hearing health. Followed by several years later, the same thing. The live conference at Struer was an AES conference. AES is the Audio Engineering Society, a very important body that many academics are members of, and quite a few trade organisations as well. So there was a really good, interesting group of people. I was there to present my master's research, which is actually on noise-related issues, and I actually met several people, one of whom was my examiner. My examiner was Dr. Adam Hill, who's a lecturer, associate professor of electroacoustics at the University of Derby, where I now teach. I met him at this conference. He'd examined my master's research paper and passed it, quite surprisingly. And we started off having conversations about things that were going on in the industry and the importance of knowledge and getting the knowledge out there of getting the knowledge out there about hearing health, hearing safety, and what we should be doing about educating people about noise at gigs. And we kind of identified that we identified the problem. So we identified the problem. There's very little out there. Education, telling people enough information about what happens at shows. When we put a show in, we have a musical event, what happens? What's happening to people's hearing? What's happening in terms of acoustics? What's happening in terms of sound systems? What's happening in terms of the venue themselves? And part of the thing that we did identify was the fact that a lot of people don't have the same vocabulary or don't understand the vocabulary that they're using to discuss these events. My background is as a live sound engineer. I started in the industry 40 years ago and have toured as a concert touring engineer. I'm still touring. I retired from full-time touring 5 years ago and took a job in education, but I still go out and do shows. And for 20 years, I was the live sound engineer for a band called The Prodigy. This means that I had a big neon sign over my head saying, "Will cause trouble." He is the problem. That man over there is the problem. Now, strange enough, I've always taken quite a proactive approach to problems and live sounds. I'm quite a responsible engineer working for quite an irresponsible band. I think that's probably a good way of describing it. But my thing and my master's paper was all about how can we make gigs quieter but still give a good experience, because I want all the audience members to have a great experience, and most sound engineers want all the members of the audience to have a great experience. There's a great phrase that came up and was co-opted by D&B of democracy for listeners, and it's something that very much as an engineer I believed in. And part of that was I know there's going to be a sound pressure level, and I will work to that sound pressure level if I possibly can. But if there's an unrealistic sound pressure level, I have to be able to explain to the people that it's unrealistic in terms that could be understood clearly. And I kind of got fed up with having these endless round conversations with people who didn't know what they were talking about. Would use phrases that they didn't, using the wrong language, talking about things, and said, well, it's the limit is 100 dB. 100 dB what? Over what time period? So it was a frustration. And I actually wrote a little paper which I gave to the band's agent that said, this is good and why, this is bad and why, and this is what all the terms mean. And it kind of came to me that this is something that was needed in the industry, not just by sound engineers, but other people. So I came into this conversation from that perspective. Adam came in from a slightly different perspective. Adam Hill, my colleague at Derby, he is a professional lecturer and has been for many years. But he also worked for a company in the States as a system tech. He had a systems tech view on live sound, how to set systems up. And being in academia for many years, is very respected in his opinions and his knowledge. He'd formed an AES group, an AES technical committee. So there's lots and lots of technical committees within the AES looking at different things. So they formed a technical committee, which is an AES working group on sound exposure and noise pollution due to outdoor entertainment events. I was invited to join it, along with lots of different colleagues from the AES who had an opinion and would be able to contribute to some of the knowledge and the discussions about what we should do. At the same time, Adam is talking to the WHO. The WHO had been looking at this as well. And the first thing they'd done was start to look at headphone use. They knew there was a hearing problem in young people around the world. And it was highlighted straight on that wearing headphones, particularly in-ear buds, is a concern. So they started thinking, a lot of you have probably got this on your mobile phone, a little thing that says volume should be turned down now, making people more aware of what they're doing with their ears and how it's affecting their hearing. After the launch of this, and I think this came out in 2019, they turned their attention to live events and looking at what's happening at live events. So Adam flew out to Geneva. About the same time as COVID was hitting, most of WHO was looking at COVID, and a very small committee of audiologists, experts, health professionals were beginning to look at our industry. It became very clear to Adam quite early on that they weren't talking the same language that we used. This apparently became blatantly clear to him when in the conversation during one of the breaks, he was talking to one of the audiologists who was saying, you keep talking about sub. Sorry, what do you mean by sub? And the audiologist said, well, just low frequencies. And he went, well, what low frequencies? And he said, about 250 hertz, which for me is kind of mid-range, really. I mean, that's not really of an inch. I'm thinking like 50. If I can get 40, I'm happy. If I can get 30, I'm really happy. So we're talking about two completely different things. And we notice a huge disparity of what audiologists were thinking. And also we're talking about health professionals who aren't kids. They're not the ones going to dance floors, listening to music. They're not even going to, particularly to loud concerts, and aren't at the cutting edge. I'm quite old, but I'm still spend quite a lot of time at kind of the rock face of loud music. Not a very good metaphor, that really, sorry. But it was really, there was obviously a disconnect. So as things went on, we kind of, Adam panicked, and Adam told me, and I panicked, and then we managed to get a selection of information together to kind of, because the WHO is not just going to take our word for granted. So we got together a group of people, myself, Adam Hill is the one in the centre. The top, I'm not very good at left and right, top right is my friend Joss Mulder. I've never actually seen him looking like this because he actually works in Australia. He's at the University of Canberra. He was at Perth when we started. So most of our meetings are in the middle of the night for him, and he always looks decidedly not like that. But he joined in. Underneath him is Michael Lawrence, who was working for Rational Acoustics. He's a system technician by trade, and he's based in the States. And Marcel Koch, who's told me off many times. He runs DB Control in the Netherlands, and is what we normally call noise police. So noise control, working at a lot of the big Benelux festivals. And he came in, he's actually doing a PhD, so he came in with that similar thing to me, with that cross between being in the industry and an interesting academia. So we all had kind of a good skill set, and we basically panicked and said, well, we're trying to tell the WHO a selection of things that are going to help them make decisions so as not to ruin our industry. Because we're very conscious that if the WHO makes a pronouncement about something, it is adopted by government strategists. Maybe not in this country, but in other countries, it's very easy for a country, when they're looking to solve a problem, to go to the organisations like the WHO, who can say, we have got really good advice, we've got proof to support this advice, take our advice. And most countries do adopt legislation that's based on information provided by these major organisations. And we're kind of standing in the corner going, excuse me, that might not be right. And they're just going, well, prove it. So we came up with 3 papers which were done over COVID, and the first one was live dynamic range. Because for me, the most important thing about a live show is dynamic range. Quiet bits and loud bits. Getting the feeling so you can excite the audience, to have dynamics. So there's bits where it gets loud, there's bits where it's quiet, there's something exciting about the show. And anyone who's engineered a show with dynamics, or watched a show with dynamics is so much more exciting than something that is just loud or something that's just on a similar pace. It's why you go to live shows, I think, is for that excitement, and part of that excitement is the dynamic. So we looked at the data of a well-known band who I happen to be working with for a very long time, who pretty much play a similar songs list we looked at 3 years worth of data. It was about 250 shows, and we looked at what happened, because I had a reading, because I'd been self-monitoring every single show. I have what's called a 10 easy system, so I take sound pressure levels of every show so that I know what sound pressure level I'm giving to the audience. So we looked at the data. I'd also made a note of what the sound pressure limit was at all those shows and the time period over which it's taken, whether it was 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour. An hour is bad. An hour is bad because you don't know what's going to happen. We're not very good at predicting the future of what's going to happen to music in an hour's time. And the worst thing is you start off too loud and you don't find out until halfway through, when basically you have to turn the PA off and you're still too loud. So 1 minute is too short. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. 3 minutes, still too short. 10 minutes is quite good because you've got a song, a break, a song. And we're talking about the average. And so this paper was all about looking at those dynamic ranges. How can we keep the dynamic range while still working to a sound pressure limit? The next one looked at the regulations around the world. There are thousands of regulations around the world, and none of us agree. In Britain, we kind of agree to pretty much ignore most of it until it comes to outdoor festivals, in which case we pretty much agree that it's around about 100 dB, maybe 98 dB, maybe slightly more. In Switzerland, they've been doing this for years. Everyone always says, Switzerland's easy, it's 100 dB, except it's not. If you're in a French-speaking Switzerland, it's one thing. In German-speaking Switzerland, it can be different, and different cantons are allowed to decide. In Belgium, the French-speaking parts of the country do a different level to other parts of the country. America is just a complete mess. The United States, they just make it up as they go along. If anyone's ever toured the States, they know how true that is. And it's usually someone with a gun as well. So we take it more seriously, even though it's nonsense. Adam's got a favourite story of one a fire marshal just comes and stands in the middle with a meter for 10 minutes and then leaves. And that's the level. He just goes, and that should, so we had to present what's going on in the world. So we looked at Marcel, he doesn't collect stamps, he collects sound pressure level measurements from around the world. So that was a lot of his work. And the next one was, how can we improve this? What do we need? And one of the things we did is we did a survey of 2,500 sound engineers around the world. So we asked sound engineers, so during lockdown, we wrote a survey and we asked sound engineers what they wanted. So I'm the proud member of more sound engineering groups on Facebook than I knew could possibly exist. So I'm in Nigerian sound engineers, South Korean side. We actually had one respondent from North Korea as well. Quite a few. Brazil, big thumbs up to Brazil. Most number of participants came from Brazil, followed by UK, followed by North America, as could be expected. But we had respondents from over 60 countries, 2,500 people giving us their opinions and what they understood and what they were looking for. And this went into this paper to support some of the things we were doing. And these 3 papers were all cited in the final document. We did other papers as well, so looking at the impact on sound level regulations. And this was the sort of thing that we found. This is just one example of, you kind of know it's true, but until you go out and prove it, no one can take it seriously. So this is looking at 2 venues of how loud I mixed the show. The show that I like to mix at the same level. So the one on the left that you can barely see is quite a nice flat line at about 97 to 98 dB. And this is in the Heineken Music Hall, which is a lovely venue. It's an engineer's dream. Andy's nodding his head there. The next one is a sports hall in Russia that they were pulling down as we were in the venue, and bits of it were falling out of the ceiling while we were there, but was truly awful. Not the worst sounding venue I've ever done in the world. That still goes to the exhibition centre in Brno, which is a circular glass dome with a curved glass roof. Acousticians, eat your heart out, brilliant. Which was a good 8 to 10 dB louder. And it's just me going, I must be able to get a gig out of this room somehow. But until we looked at all this data, and it became very clear, venues that put effort into making them sound, and making them being appropriate for live music, paid dividends in lower sound pressure levels. And this all fed into the work by the World Health Organization. We also talked about education and certification in sound pressure level measurements, and we published a paper covering this area, once again to feed into this general conversation. And in 2022, the WHO published this document. And where we are at the present, there's still the AES working group. We're still working towards greater knowledge, greater certification, but we've proposed a solution, which then became HELA. But before I talk about HELA, I need to talk about this document, because this is such an important document that's kind of slipped in under the radar in this country. It's been looked at a lot more in other countries, and the standard was released in March 2022 and comprised 6 main features that, when implemented, allow audience members around the world to enjoy amplified music with protection of their hearing, whilst also preserving the integrity of the artistic experience. And I think that's a really well written phrase, because it's telling us everything that we want to do. We want to have good shows that people enjoy, that are safe. And the 6 points they came up with, the first one was a sound level limit, which came out at 100 dB LAEQ over 15 minutes. If you don't know what this means, you're going to have to come and do the HELA certification. But basically it means that you can mix the show on an average of 100 dB over a 15-minute average. So every 15 minutes you need to be under 100 dB. A lot of people have told me that this is too low, that it should be higher. So I mixed the last major tour I did before I officially retired from live touring for the first time in November. I mixed an arena tour of about 10 shows and I came in at 100 dB every night. So it is possible, and it is possible to do this with what would be considered by most to be a loud band. So it is manageable. And this is the recommendation they're making for. 15 minutes gives you enough time, it gives you enough leeway to have a quiet song, a louder song, some bits in between where you hope the audience are going to be quiet. We also did a publish on audience participatory noise, which was inspired by the Justin Bieber tour and which was mirrored by the Taylor Swift tour, which shows that the audience is quite often a lot louder than the artist, particularly if they're under 18 and female, or general genders anyway. So we published a paper on that, but this is a good level. I think it's a good level, and it's certainly something that's achievable and gives a nice balance. The second thing was that the level should be monitored by someone who knows what they're doing and understands what they're telling you and understands the implications of what they're telling you and hopefully that you understand what they're telling you, but can explain to you what they're telling you. So someone who understands which way up the meter goes. There's a very famous story of Harvey Goldsmith in Live Aid, was asked if it was too loud, and he actually had one of those old school mobile phones that were really unpopular, and he actually just punched in 98 on the keypad, which used to be on the handset, held it up to the person and said, "It's all right, it's only 98." And they went, "Oh, great." So we need to know that people who are making these measurements are using the correct equipment and are doing it in a way that is informed. And I think informed is really the important word. The next thing is venue acoustics and sound systems. Sound systems and venue acoustics are optimized, ensuring safe listening and improved sound quality, which goes back to the Heineken Music Hall. I hate to keep saying its name, but it's such a great venue. There's lots of new venues that are coming up that have got these shorter acoustic times that are more appropriate for the type of events we're putting in them. Thinking about the acoustics of your venue, thinking about how to make it good for your customers, thinking about how it's going to sound for the people, the audience, and it's all about the audience. It's always got to be all about the audience. And putting in sound systems and thinking about what you're doing with your sound systems, not just throwing the sound system into the space. Personal hearing protection, giving the option and making it clearly advertised that the personal hearing protection is available should you want it. They're not saying you have to wear hearing protection, and this is something that I would never say, hearing protection should not be mandated at live concerts. You should be able to go to a concert without hearing protection. It shouldn't be a necessary thing. It appalls me that it would be. The next thing was quiet zones. There should be somewhere that you can get away from the loud music, especially if you're going clubbing for 5 hours. You should be able to go somewhere that's quieter to take a break, and it shouldn't just be to the smoking section outside. There should be somewhere else that they can go and take a break. And the last one was appropriate training and information, and this is where we came in. So we're trying to pick up this side of things, the appropriate training and information, by providing a certification that covers all these points and many more that's for everybody. And I'll come back to that point in a minute. And when we did the survey, one of the questions that we put in at the end was, we asked people, should live sound profession be regulated? And most people were kind of against regulation. As we're asking sound engineers, most sound engineers don't want to be regulated. But if there was a scheme to teach you about regulations, about sound pressure level, and to understand everything, would you be interested? Would you be willing to go along to a course and do training and take part of a certification? And we got a massive thumbs up from engineers who responded with, can't see exactly, something like 70 to 80% of respondents were willing to take on certification. And this really spurred us on to know that there is a market out there. But we didn't want this to be about sound engineers. It's got to be about the whole industry. So we need to get a few more people involved. So we kind of reached out. We needed more knowledge. One of the people, Alex, who's on the far right, is down here. Give us a wave, Alan. Andy Wardle's about somewhere as well today. So we grabbed people in. So Alex is acoustician, I presume, by trade, and works for Vanguardia. So spent most of the summer with Taylor Swift, which must be fun for him, I'm sure. Next, working backwards, Heather and Laura are both audiologists, because we needed someone who's got that scientific knowledge to talk about hearing, because I'm not qualified to talk about how your ear works, the impacts of loud noise on sound. I can only talk about the practical implications. So we got two audiologists. They're both based in the States. We've got Elena Shabalina, who for many years worked for D&B Audio Technic, who's very, very smart, to talk about system design, particularly work on the way sound propagates and propagates over large areas, which is very important for things like festivals, but also for clubs. Your sound is going to get out, it's going to affect neighbours. And Andy Wardle is another academic, but also firmly based in the live sound industry. So we got what we thought was a fairly good mixture, and we kind of separated out each section to people with that area of expertise. So, first thing, draw up what you think people need to know. And what we thought people need to know is they need to know everything to be able to understand the World Health Organization document, and a bit more stuff that we felt was really for our industry, from our practical side, things that we know can help you in this job. Decide who the people are that we're trying to talk to. So decide who this certification is going to go to, who actually needs to see this. Then we decided who's doing what. We kind of divided up tasks. So I kind of did intros and outros. So I did audience. What do audience want? Because we want to start off with what do audience deserve? What do an audience need from a concert? Because if we start from that, we can then go some way to knowing what it is that we're trying to deal with. And then Alex and I finished with the tail end as well, which was kind of how do we disseminate this knowledge, and how do we disseminate on a local level, and how do we plan? So how do we make a sound plan where we can improve things and push things forward for individuals and for venues and events? Then we changed our mind about who this was for. Because I kind of came back to that conversation with the agent. I thought, well, I need to be taking agents this, and I need to be talking to all the other people that I need to talk to about sound, which is bar managers. I need to talk about bar managers, because they'll put bar staff in the bar for hours and hours and hours with a speaker right next to them. I need to talk to security guards, because they keep leaving the door open. And they need to tell us, they're walking about, if someone's leaving the door open, they need to know to close it. And you need to tell them why they need to close it. It's sad, I know, but you need to tell them why they need to close it. But also, I need to, has anyone, I know there's probably going to be only one person in the room who's ever done this gig. There's a gig in Madrid called the Tropic Club, I think it's called the Tropic Club, that's truly awful, because the mixing position for front of house is right in front of the bar, and next to you, either side of where you stand, is two big plastic tubs where they chuck the empty bottles after they pour them into the bar. So you spend the whole gig going clang, clang. I need to be able to tell the bar staff, this is really bad. I need to start off these conversations. I can't mix the show because all I can hear is bottles. It may be really loud. I have no idea. I went deaf after 30 pints. So this needs to go out to everyone. Everyone needs to know this information. Everyone who's working on an event should need to know this. We introduced greater editorial oversight, because everyone's writing these things, and we kind of thought, actually, we should try and have some kind of style that's more or less the same. We did a rough plan of what it should look like, which was very much based on Who's done industry training like Lola or PUA or anything from that? Hands up who's done boring industry training. Hands up who has to do it every year. And you should be doing it. Some of you should be doing it. So we thought it's got to be like that. It's got to be boring industry training that everybody does. And it should be matter of fact that this is stuff you need to know because it's important. It's protecting something that once you lose it, you don't get it back. Your ears, your hearing. So then clearly define who it's for, which is everybody. So we clearly define it's for everyone involved in live events. Then we need to check all the information's covered. Have we gone through it? So we've sent this out to lots of people to read, come back with comments. What have we missed out? Because having edited all this and been part of the editorial team, it's a huge responsibility that we're taking on. So we need to make sure that we're covering everything. Check it's still manageable. In other words, can you do it in less than a month? I teach this over 3 years. That's impractical, I know. So we need to keep it down to a reasonable amount of time. Then edit it. So we edit it down and we actually produce 2 versions. A main version, which will be done mainly by sound engineers and management, production managers, venue managers, and then a core. The core is the one that the bar staff does, the bar manager does, and anyone you feel that should be involved. Which was the light version, so we did a light version. And then we thought of a name, and we let the Dutchman think of a name. I don't know why. He thought HELA sounded endlessly amusing. It's probably a Dutch joke that I just don't get. He said, well, you know, it's like HELA. And we all went, okay. Has anyone got any better ideas? So we're stuck with HELA, and HELA stands for Healthy Ears, Limited Annoyance, because we wanted to make sure that we're having a positive impact. The online certification course, so it's all going to be done online. We're preparing the materials. We're just about to finish module 8 of the main version. The core one has already been done out, and that's being sent out for review and is launched, I'll say this month, and it should be this month, hopefully. And it's a compilation as well of currently accepted best practice. What are we doing well? What can we push to other venues that's good? What can we disseminate good practice? And the different sections, I'll come to what's in them in a bit more detail if I get time in a bit. And it's the main thing is it's like food hygiene training, but for your ears. You wouldn't go to a restaurant that didn't have food hygiene training. Why should you go to a gig where they haven't got hearing training? That's a good selling point, isn't it? So, the other side of this is not free. We have to pay for this. It's been set up by some founding members who I'll come to in a minute, but there will be a charge, which isn't going to be a lot. It's going to be about £30 for some training, which will last for 5 years. We're expecting people to retake this every 5 years because information will change. Information will need updating. It'll be cheaper for large organisations, and the light version will be cheaper still. The money we raise will go into funding research in this field because there isn't enough research in this field. And hopefully all the money we raise will go into that kind of research. The course content has been developed pro bono by the group of experts I've mentioned, and obviously it's going to be HELA Complete and the HELA Core. It's an online platform. Initially in English, there was quite a fight, but we've won out British English for the first version, managed to fight back the Americans, so there's very few Zs in there. There'll be a lot more in the American version. Sorry, Zs, there'll be Zs in the American version. And you can get certified as an individual. We're looking at venues being certified, and we're looking at events being certified, such as festivals, valid for 5 years. And just to give you an idea of what you kind of expect to see, this is the main menu from one of the modules. There's an introduction, then there's talk about something like professional. What do audiences expect to see? Talking about professionalism. Not a large amount of text, spoken text as well, with supporting things for people of hard of hearing and hard of sight. And then some questions. So, question this one. I can't see my screen, never mind using it. Who should be responsible for providing a safe listening environment at a music venue? Should it be the technical staff, the venue managers and owners, the bar staff, the security and door staff, or all of the above, votes for A, votes for B, votes for C, D, E. E's have all passed, okay? And then at the end of it, there's a multiple choice assessment. So the last question goes along during, and it gives you a formative answer. So it gives you the answer, then tells you why it's the right answer. And then when you get to the end, you get an assessment and you get a whole selection of questions. And can I say that to get these screenshots, I had to do the entire module to get to the end of it. And luckily, I got 100%, which isn't surprising since I wrote most of the questions, but I rarely get 100%, which means they might be cost me quite hard, or I'm a bit stupid. I suspect I'm a bit stupid. So, very simple, taking you through the process of learning, that anyone who's done this kind of training before will be familiar with. The good thing is that most of the people who've done this training, who wrote the training, were actually quite interested in what they were working on and have quite enjoyed the process, which is a positive. So hopefully other people who've got no real interest in this, like the bar staff and the security, will find this interesting and have something they can take away from it that will be positive. Obviously, we're expecting sound engineers and production managers to really take something away. We reached out to some founding members, and we're really lucky to get all these really great companies involved in this right from the very beginning. We didn't reach out to everybody, so if I didn't ask you, sorry. I'm thinking of people I could have asked now, but I didn't, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you, but you're still welcome to join in the conversation. But the founding members are going to be part of the guiding committee to make sure we're staying on track as well, and also help form the research committee that will choose what subjects we put money into researching. We're not just going to throw money at research, it's going to be very much for this industry on very focused research. I was hoped to be joined today by Michael Kill, who's the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association, but unfortunately his mother became ill yesterday and he's got to go and join her. But we can now say that we've now been picked up as the official certification and training by the Nighttime Industries Association. Most of you will hopefully have heard of the Nighttime Industries Association. It's a major body in this country, and now it's becoming a major body internationally. Many countries are being picked up or picking up the Nighttime Industry Association ethic or ethos and building into their countries. And part of that is they're pushing for something they call Listen for Life. Listen for Life is being promoted in association with Love Sound and Specsavers. Specsavers are going to offer hearing tests, and this was part of a major thing. Rob Shepherd, who's the man on next to Michael there, is an internationally respected audiologist who's been pushing this for years and years and years, particularly in the way we test hearing. That's going to help us in the future. That's going to tell you you've got problems before they become too apparent. Most testing these days, when we listen to tones, only tells you the problems that you've got when they're already too bad. Autoacoustic emissions, which is what we're going to be trying to push testing, is a lot more useful and helpful in early stages. So we're going to be providing the certification supporting this, and we've had interest from over 7,000 by all official live venues in Norway as their training system. So we've got 7,000 venues in the UK, but the whole of Norway. So it can only get better from here on in. So thank you so much for listening. Sorry I haven't left much time. There's a web page, HELA Initiative. If you register there, we'll send you information as soon as it comes up. It's championing safe listening at music events. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for listening.